Hello. This sermon audio is a ministry of the Town Church in Fort Collins, Colorado. If you would like to learn more about us, how to connect, or how to support us, go to our website, thetownchurch.org. While listening to the Bible preached is a healthy part of our spiritual formation, it is not the whole picture. So if you aren't a part of a local church, we encourage you to prayerfully commit to a local body of believers where you live. We're glad you can join us, and we hope God uses the following sermon to reveal more of His glory to you.
If you do have your Bible, go ahead and grab it and make your way to the book of Nehemiah. If you don't have a Bible, we have some on the table in the back. We also have the Bible journals for Nehemiah. If you want to grab one of those, we're into Nehemiah now, so make sure to grab one of those if you want on the back table as well. This is what we do as a church. We take a book of the Bible, we work through it from beginning to end. In this case, we're working through two books, Ezra and Nehemiah. Nehemiah chapter 2 is where we are. Nehemiah is in the Old Testament, the first half of your Bibles. Ezra, Nehemiah, Esther, Job, Psalms. If you get to Psalms, come on back the other way. Let me give you a little recap since we just started Nehemiah last week. Ezra and Nehemiah were originally one book, separated into two books over the years based on the characters and the themes. Ezra is about Ezra and the work that he was about, the efforts to restore proper worship for the exiles who were coming back through the rebuilding of the altar, through the rebuilding of the temple. Nehemiah is about Nehemiah. Good, you're with me. All right, Nehemiah and his efforts to bring restoration, not to that worship element, but to the community of God rebuilding the wall and the city. So between Ezra and Nehemiah, there's a 13-year gap where there are no thematic changes. The people are still coming back after 70 years of exile, 70 years of slavery in Babylon. Exile due to their disobedience against God. God is, though, restoring them to right relationship with Him. He's calling them back. He's restoring them through some hard things, through discipline. He's restoring them through proper teaching. Ezra has a heart to teach the people the law of God. He's restoring them through His mercy, through His grace, through His patience. We see this over and over. And we shift gears when we get to Nehemiah and learn of a guy who has a very trusted position in the king's court as what? The cupbearer. Right? He's the cupbearer to the king, meaning that he tasted all of the food and drink before it went to the king in an effort to make sure the king was not poisoned. So think through this. Let's put it all together. Nehemiah is a Jew in exile in a land not his own, in one of the most trusted positions in the king's court, not by accident. Providentially positioned by God to be in this place. And what we saw last week, Hanani, Nehemiah's brother, brings word to Nehemiah that the people back in Jerusalem, back in Judah, were in danger because the walls and the gates of the city were in ruins. That was serious for the people because the wall was the very thing that protected them from outside attack. It protected them from outside attack, but it also distinguished them from those who were outside of the community. So it had this dual effect that it protected them, but also grouped them together. So there was a physical aspect to the wall and the gates, and there's a spiritual aspect to the wall and the gates. And those things were absent. They were in ruins. And Nehemiah, on getting word from his brother, was devastated, and his response was prayer. This mourning and prayer, weeping and fasting, seeking God for help, knowing there is nothing he can do on his own back in Babylon. He prays. Last week, my challenge for us was to be a people of prayer in that way, both for our community, our church family, and also for the city at large, the community outside of this building, outside of the community of our church family. We want to see God doing great things here, yes, and we're seeing some of it, seeing glimpses of that. And we also have a desire to see God restoring the city, restoring the place around us, to see the gospel transform the city that we currently live in and move about. That's where we left off last week. That was the challenge I gave. But here's what I think we often see happen. And I want to warn us about a danger when that kind of challenge is given, to be a people of prayer. In Christian circles, prayer often becomes then an excuse for inaction. It becomes a thing that we say, well, we're praying about it, and so we don't move. When we hear of a need in our own church community, we often say, and we mean it, hey, I'll be praying for you. And that's good. That's what we ought to be doing. When we hear of something tragic, maybe in our city or in our state, in our country, well, what we often hear is something like, well, prayers going out to them, right? Good thoughts going out to them, something like that. And as we talked about last week, we do need to be pleading with God on behalf of the things that are going on in our church and in our city. That's a good thing. But if our prayer is simply used to ease our conscience and give us room for inaction, we're not honoring the God who has called us to be light in our current context. Does that make sense? What we learned from Nehemiah in chapter 2 is that his prayer was based on his heart and his vision for the city, and it led him to action. It didn't lead him just to sit and pray and pray and pray and pray, although he did that, but it led him to action. Nehemiah prays in chapter 1, give success to your servant today. He didn't pray, oh God, please send someone to help them, right? Work it out, God. Send the harvest is ready. Send someone. He prayed, give success to your servant, to me. To me, I have a heart for the city, and that led him to pray, and we'll see today it also leads him to action. His prayer, Nehemiah's prayer, is not an excuse for inaction. So first, what we see from Nehemiah as we step into chapter 2 is that Nehemiah has a heart for the city. He has a heart for the city. Look at verse 1 of chapter 2. In the month of Nisan, in the 20th year of King Artaxerxes, when wine was before him, this is Nehemiah speaking, I took up the wine and gave it to the king. Now I had not been sad in his presence. And the king said to me, why is your face sad, seeing you are not sick? This is nothing but sadness of the heart. Then I was very much afraid, and I said to the king, let the king live forever. Why should not my face be sad when the city, the place of my father's graves, lies in ruins and its gates have been destroyed by fire? We'll stop there. In these first verses, we see this. He has a heart for the city. He's been there now for 4 months, right? So we saw in the last week the month of Chislev, and now we're in the month of Nisan. You don't need to study that calendar. I'll tell you, it's 4 months. So we're 4 months removed after the word came from Nehemiah's brother about the state of the city. So think through this. For 4 months, Nehemiah has kept it together. He's focused on prayer. For 4 months, focused on prayer. Can I just add in here, don't give up. Whatever it is you're praying for, don't give up. For 4 months, Nehemiah heard the word, knew what was going on, and continued to pray, pray, pray. Don't give up on whatever it is you're praying for. God is listening. He's praying for 4 months, and he's focusing on his task to be the cupbearer of the king. He says, I gave wine to the king, and I had not been sad in front of him. I did my job. I kept my composure in front of him, but I couldn't do that forever, and the king noticed that something was up. He had noticed my sad disposition. For the cupbearer, though, to be sad, think through this, for the cupbearer to be sad meant that something was maybe wrong with the food, right? So that's what's going through the king's mind. Something was wrong with the wine. The cupbearer had only one acceptable emotion while he's with the king, and that is confident excitement, confidence in front of the king about serving the king. If the cupbearer changed his demeanor at all, the king gets worried. The king is wondering what is going on. So Nehemiah has kept it together for 4 months, but his heart is to be back in Jerusalem, and he cannot keep that hidden forever. You've experienced that, haven't you? Where you've got something on your heart and your mind. You've been praying in a certain direction. You believe God may be moving you in that direction. You may believe God is leading you towards something. And it's hard to do anything but think about that thing. And so the king asks, why are you sad if I... Really, here's what he's saying. If I'm not going to die, why are you sad? Your sadness is based then on your own issues, isn't it? And so we're told in verse 2 that Nehemiah was very afraid. Why? We got to put Ezra and Nehemiah together. Do you remember all the way back to Ezra chapter 4? There's a king by the name of Artaxerxes who puts a stop to the rebuilding of the walls. You remember that false accusation that comes against the people? The people who are living in that area say, hey, we want to help you with the walls. And the people say, no, because you'll have foreign gods and you'll bring that in to our camp and we don't want that. And so they say no. Well, the people, in frustration about that, send an accusation back to the king about the people who are there, God's people. That letter goes to King Artaxerxes, who puts a stop to the building of the walls and the gates. The very thing that Nehemiah was upset about was caused by the king he's paid or in position to protect. There's conflict there. So for Nehemiah to now tell the king, you're the reason I'm sad, it would be certain death for Nehemiah. But Nehemiah can't hold that back. He can't hold back his heart for the city, and so he says to the king, King, live forever, right? Oh, king, live forever. He shows his respect to the king first, and then he says, well, why shouldn't I be sad? My home city, the very city where my fathers are from and have been buried, that city, my home city, is in ruins. And you can imagine some fear after saying something like that to the king who is opposed to the rebuilding of the city in the first place. The men who wrote the letter to the king, we see in Ezra chapter 4, tell the king that it is a rebellious and wicked city. And if it is rebuilt, they will rebel and they won't pay taxes once it's finished. So that's on the mind of Artaxerxes. This is who Nehemiah is talking to. He knows the king's view of the city and the efforts to rebuild. And you can imagine that there's some fear from Nehemiah, but he's no longer able to hold that back. His heart is to get back to his people and to help. Get back to Jerusalem and to begin this part of restoration in the city. And the question that I've been asking myself all week as I've been studying through this passage and reading it over and over is this. Do I have the same kind of heart that Nehemiah has for you all or for the city around me? That I long to be about the restoration of the people, the city. Do I long to see the people of God, you all restored to him? Do I long to see the city around us transformed by the gospel? If someone saw me upset this last week, what was it about? Am I saddened when the gospel is not moving through us? Am I saddened when the gospel is not penetrating and changing, transforming the city around us, or does it affect me at all? When we look at Nehemiah, we see a man who's passionately moved because of the devastation of the city. Listen, even if it means for him a loss of job, even if it means for him persecution, even if it means for him possibly death, are we moved in these kinds of ways, even if it means, I'll just put it this way, even if it means our own discomfort in some way? You define that however. My question this week went from, do I have the same kind of heart that Nehemiah has? It went from that to this question, why don't I have the same kind of heart that Nehemiah has? Pretty quickly. And I think the answer for me, and maybe this is the same for you, the answer to that question, why don't I have that kind of heart, it's this: because I'm often more concerned about my own comfort and my own peace than I am for the restoration, the healing, and for the peace of those around me. I'm often more concerned about my own comfort and my own peace. In the gospel account of Luke 19, we're told that Jesus is seen riding into the city on a colt. He nears the city, and as he nears the city, people honor him, cheer him on, praise him, line the streets with their coats. Really what they're doing is rolling out the red carpet for a king. And do you remember what happens when Jesus, if you're familiar with this story, when Jesus gets near enough to the city that he can see it? What's he do? He begins to weep. He begins to weep over the city because the city does not know the king. He looks out over the people and recognizes that the people in general don't know the king. And he says in chapter 19, verse 41, if only you would know this day the things that make for peace. A true king would bring peace. You're looking for something different than what is coming, and the true king is coming. That king would bring peace. Here's a moment for Jesus to soak in all of the celebration for himself. People are praising him, shouting cheers at him, and he instead weeps because the majority of the city does not know the true king. Oh, would that be us? Would that be us? Or are we content with our growing little church community to the point where we just don't care a whole lot? Or where we don't truly weep over the lack of the peace in our own church community and in our own city? Do we have a heart like Nehemiah? Where does that kind of compassionate heart then lead Nehemiah? Look at verse 4, chapter 2. Then the king said to me, what are you requesting? So I prayed to the God of heaven. And I said to the king, if it pleases the king, and if your servant has found favor in your sight, that you send me to Judah, to the city of my father's graves, that I may rebuild it. And the king said to me, the queen sitting beside him, how long will you be gone, and when will you return? So it pleased the king to send me when I had given him a time. And I said to the king, if it pleases the king, let letters be given to me to the governors of the province beyond the river, that they may let me pass through until I come to Judah. And a letter to Asaph, the keeper of the king's forest, that he may give me timber to make beams for the gates of the fortress of the temple, and for the wall of the city, and for the house that I shall occupy. And the king granted me what I asked, for the good hand of God was upon me. We see the king ask Nehemiah, okay, what are you requesting? What are you actually asking for here? And what's the first thing that Nehemiah does when he gets that question? He prays. He prays. A good call, right? In a time of extreme uncertainty, Nehemiah doesn't know what's happening. In a time of uncertainty, Nehemiah prays. Probably a silent prayer fired up really quickly for wisdom. Have you been in those moments? You're in the middle of a conversation. You're like, oh, God, please give me wisdom here. I don't know what's coming. That's Nehemiah. He just shoots that up. Please help, God. And then Nehemiah goes for it. He has a vision for the city. He has a heart that leads him to this vision for what the restoration of the city could bring. And so he shows all of his cards to the king, and he asks the king for three things. First, Nehemiah asks the king himself to send him in verse 5. The king wants to know how long he's going to be gone. If I'm going to send you, how long are you going to be gone? Why is the king asking Nehemiah that? Because Nehemiah is the cupbearer to the king, and he's trying to plan how long he has to eat leftovers, right? The food that's already been tested. If he's letting go of his cupbearer, he's got to know, well, who's going to protect me? So he says, send me. Secondly, Nehemiah asks the king to write him letters of safe passage on this 900-plus mile journey so that he can get there safely, verse 7. And then third, Nehemiah asks that the king write a letter to the keeper of the king's forest, really the National Parks Department, so he can get large trees for the rebuilding of the gates of the temple, the walls around the city, and thought he'd throw it in there just since he's asking so he can rebuild his own home, verse 8. Remember, King Artaxerxes is a pagan king who believes Jerusalem is a wicked and rebellious city who will not pay taxes once the city is rebuilt. Nehemiah has a vision for rebuilding that city. First, he prays, good move, and then he boldly asks the king to support his vision. The king gives him everything he asks for. Why? Is it because the king had a wake-up call? He's had this come to Jesus moment? Or is this a political move? Hey, this is going to work out better for me? Is that why? No, it's not at all. Look at the end of verse 8. I want you to see it. The end of verse 8, Nehemiah tells us what? For the good hand of my God was upon me. Why did the king move in that direction? Because the good hand of God was on him. Remember, 4 months previous to all of this, Nehemiah fasted and he mourned and he prayed for days and pleaded with God. Chapter 1, verse 11, he says, give success to your servant today and grant him mercy in the sight of this man. This man is who? The king. Did God answer Nehemiah's pleading? Absolutely. Nehemiah had a vision to see the city restored, starting with the walls to protect the temple and walls to protect the city, and also walls for his own house, because he has a plan. Shh, don't tell the king. He has a plan to move back there, right? He's just told the king, oh, this is the time period. What's his bigger plan? He's moving back. Nehemiah labored in prayer for 4 months, and in the middle of his conversation with the king, he prays. And right before he requested these things of the king, he prays. His heart and his vision for the city, we've got to hear this, it flowed from a life of prayer. He wasn't on his own here. This flowed from constant communication with the God whose hand was on him. Is that us, friends? When God places something on your heart for the good of our church family, for the good of the city at large, for the people around you in your neighborhood, when God places something on your heart, do you labor in prayer seeking God's will? Or do you say on your way out the door to do that thing, bless me, God, because here I go? Are you just asking for his blessing on the thing that you want to do? Or are you pleading with him to lead you? Can I challenge us once again? I know I challenged us last week. Sorry, 2 challenges in 2 weeks. To be praying for the people in our own church family who are struggling. That was my challenge last week. To be praying for those around us who do not yet know Jesus and the peace he brings. Can I add to that challenge this challenge? Are we content to simply end on prayer, or does our prayer then move us to action? Can I challenge us to consider what is the action? Not because our action earned favor with God, but in part because we're able to model Jesus, who had a heart and a vision for the city to see the king, the real king. We have a heart like Nehemiah that wants to get back and see restoration be about the city. Could that be said of us? That our prayer then leads us into action. Nehemiah's heart and vision lead to action. That's what we see next. His heart and his vision for the city and the restoration there lead him to action. Look at verse 9. Then I came to the governors of the province beyond the river and gave them the king's letters. Now the king had sent with me officers of the army and horsemen. But when Sanballat the Horonite and Tobiah the Ammonite servant heard this, it displeased them greatly that someone had come to seek the welfare of the people of Israel. Nehemiah's heart and his vision lead him to action. Nehemiah sets out on his journey with the king's favor on him, and right away, what does he meet? He meets opposition. He meets opposition, and we know that's going to happen. We've talked about this in the book of Ezra, that when there is a good work of God, opposition will be there. Our enemy wants nothing more than to throw obstacles in our way. And so Nehemiah meets Sanballat and Tobiah, and they're frustrated, they're upset that someone has a vision for good for these people. So Nehemiah faces opposition, but that opposition doesn't stop him because God's good hand is on him and he must move forward in action. We've got to be prepared for that opposition and expect it and allow that not to put a stop to what God's called us to be about. We need to be praying for courage. for ourselves and for one another, that we would not lose hope and settle into nominal, lazy Christianity with no heart or vision to see the gospel transform anything, let alone be a part of that transformation. Opposition will happen. That cannot stop us. So Nehemiah has a heart to see the city restored, also has a vision to see it carried out. Opposition right in the middle of that. To step forward, he needs to know the needs of the city. So he goes out for some inspection. That's what we see next. Opposition, he goes out for some inspection. Look at verse 11. It says, "So I went to Jerusalem and was there 3 days. Then I arose in the night, and I and a few men with me, and I told no one what my God had put into my heart to do for Jerusalem. There was no animal with me, but the one on which I rode. I went out by night by the valley gate to the dragon spring and to the dung gate. And I inspected the walls of Jerusalem that were broken down and its gates that had been destroyed by fire. Then I went to the fountain gate and to the king's pool, but there was no room for the animal that was under me to pass. Then I went up in the night by the valley and inspected the wall, and I turned back and entered by the valley gate, and so returned. And the officials did not know where I had gone or what I was doing, and I had not yet told the Jews, the priests, the nobles, the officials, and the rest who were to do the work." We'll stop there. Nehemiah doesn't yet have a plan, right? He's still trying to formulate what's going to go on. A full plan of attack is still lacking, so he needs to go inspect the damage. He needs to assess what is going on. I'll say it this way. He needs to know the needs of the city. And that takes some inspection. So I'll apply that to us in this way with a question. Do we know well the needs of our city? Do we know well the needs of our own church family? What kind of difficult work of research are we doing to know the need, to inspect the needs of the people around us? Or are we waiting on the church to do that work for you and then tell you how you can chip in? There are needs in your own neighborhood that the church doesn't have a finger on the pulse of. There are needs in your own family and in your own circles. It's by no mistake that God has placed you where you live, where you work, the hobbies you're a part of. Are you doing the careful inspection needed to be a part of gospel restoration right in those circles? The people who live near you may be living in severe brokenness, demolished lives in need of restoration. The pain is deep. The people who are right there near you, a pain that only Jesus can come in and restore and solve. And he offers that. But do you know about the needs of the people around? Have you done that kind of inspection? Let's get really practical. I'll say it this way. Let's get really personal for me. All day long yesterday, I spent the day working on and rebuilding a part of our fence and 3 gates. I felt very much like Nehemiah. And I did it just so I could have this illustration. Not really. I was working on the fence and 3 gates that needed to have some repair done. And we live in a cul-de-sac at the end of a cul-de-sac. And so my neighbors are coming and going all day long. And a few of them circled up toward our driveway to see what we were doing, see what I was doing, all the noise I was making, and all the boards I was ripping off after I've already put them up there because they were crooked, and on, right? So they were watching what I was doing. And I could tell a few times that they were moving close to try to interact and to have some conversation, and I had no time for them, to my shame. I just kept working. And about an hour after they had approached my driveway, the airport shuttle pulled up at my neighbor's house, and the kids ran out of the house. Their kids ran out of the house and began to yell, "Grandma, Grandpa." And there was this moment of joy as they were interacting. And this is what hit me as I thought through that. I had no idea that they were expecting family. And I'm sure that's what one of the neighbor kids was wanting to talk to me about. I had no idea why the family was there, if there was something going on in their lives, if there was a celebration of some sort, if there was some sort of tragic event that had happened, that the grandparents had come in. I could have, if I would have put down my tools for just a few seconds. But to me, the work of the gate and the fence were of much more importance. There could have been an open door to see what was going on in their lives. That's what hit me this morning as I was thinking through this. Did I have the time to inspect what was going on in the lives of my neighbors? And that hits us in all kinds of ways, doesn't it? What are some of the needs of your neighbors? I don't mean like what car repair do they need. What's going on in their hearts? What's going on in their lives? Do you know them in that kind of way? What are some of the needs of our city at large? What are then the open doors into those conversations? Are there ways that I personally can be invested? Or are there ways that we as a church could be invested to help those who are in need? Are we putting to action the very thing we say we have a vision and a heart to do, to see the gospel transform everything? Are we just praying that God would do it? Nehemiah had a heart causing him to see the city restored and a vision to see it carried out. So even in the midst of opposition, he set out to inspect what was going on and to make a plan for it. Now, did Nehemiah carry all that out on his own? Is it on his own that he moved forward? It's not. Look at verse 17. We'll finish this out. Then I said to them, "You see the trouble we're in, how Jerusalem lies in ruins with its gates burned. Come, let us build the wall of Jerusalem that we may no longer suffer derision." And I told them of the hand of my God that had been upon me for good, and also of the words that the king had spoken to me. And they said, "Let us rise up and build." So they strengthened their hands for the good work. But when Sanballat the Horonite and Tobiah the Ammonite servant and Geshem the Arab heard of it, they jeered at us and despised us and said, "What is this thing that you're doing? Are you rebelling against the king?" Then I replied to them, "The God of heaven will make us prosper, and we his servants will arise and build. But you have no portion or right or claim in Jerusalem." Did he do it alone? No, there's collaboration. In the face of opposition, he went out to inspect what was going on. There's inspection and there's also collaboration. He tells the people what he finds out from his inspection. He says, "Let's go. The city's in trouble. We need to get to work. Let's go." And the people said, "Well, I'm pretty sure that's not my gifting." Is that what they say? Or they say, I'm pretty sure someone else will probably volunteer, so I'll just wait until I see all the slots filled. Is that what they said? Did they say prayers and thoughts for them? No, they didn't. They said, "Let's go. Let's move forward." And guess what? They faced more opposition. The same two guys and another one jump in and throw insults and question them. But when the people of God collaborate, when the people of God join together, the opposition against the work is manageable, isn't it? At least more manageable. We've got to remember that as a church. We are all a part of the same church community for a reason. It's not a coincidence. It's not an accident. We are all a part of this church family, and one of the reasons that God put all of us strange people together is so that we could carry out the vision that he's given us together. This isn't just about Nehemiah. This isn't just about the leader. It's not just about the elders. It's not just about the township leaders. This is about us together. Paul tells us in 1 Corinthians 12 that we are one body, many members. None of us have the same function. All of our gifts are different, but we are all one body in Christ. We desperately need one another. To move forward, we need one another for the restoration of the city to occur. Restoration that only the gospel can bring. And so maybe that means you. Yep, you. You thinking about or and then moving toward calling or texting a friend. Maybe it just plays out very practically. Someone you know who's a part of your church community saying, hey, today I'm working helping my neighbor do some stuff around their yard. It's an opportunity for me to serve them. I know you have a truck. People with trucks, you're all eyes, right? All eyes are on you. And we can help serve you, serve our neighbor together. We can jump in together. Hey, I'm having some neighbors over to interact over dinner or drinks, and I'd love to have you be a part of that so that we can do this together. There's collaboration with others. As we think about Nehemiah and his heart to see the city restored and his vision to carry that out, we're challenged in our own lives. Yeah, we saw this last week. It all starts with prayer. And this week we see that prayer was then woven in through Nehemiah's life. So prayer is all over it, but it doesn't stop with prayer. Prayer is not an excuse for Nehemiah to be inactive. I'll just pray about it. No, he moves forward. The goal of the church is not simply to pray. Yes, it is to pray, but it's not simply to pray that the people would come to us. We've got a lot of great ministries to offer if people would only come to us. What if we began to think about ways to be with others who do not yet know Jesus, to be outward facing? What if God used us together to bring peace and reconciliation? The song we sang last week, to a world who longs to know the affections of a father who will never let them go. I want to see that mark us. I want to see the gospel flowing in and out of our lives into every aspect of everything we do, that we don't just have a vision statement that says, yeah, we've got the gospel transforms everything, but what are we doing? How are we moving forward? Paul says in 1 Corinthians chapter 9, he says, to the weak, I became weak that I might win the weak. I've become all things to all people, that by all means I might save some. Is that where Paul stops? I'm just going to be all things to all people so that salvation can come. Is that the end goal, right? Checking off boxes and filling seats. That's Paul's end goal. Is that what he's moving toward? No, he has a heart to be in the lives of people in ways that are compelling them to see more of Jesus. So right after this verse comes this verse. He says, I do it all for the sake of the gospel. Why? That I may share with them in its blessings. Do you see what Paul's saying? That if I get to communicate the truth of the gospel to others and they come to know Jesus, guess what? We get to share together in its blessings. Are our hearts broken for those around who are experiencing a lack of peace, for those who are searching for meaning and fulfillment and finding nothing? Is our vision for the truth of the gospel to bring restoration to our own hearts such that restoration is then the fruit of those around us as well? Where we get to share in the blessings with everyone who comes to faith in Jesus. We get to share in that. Just like Nehemiah, it starts with prayer. Prayer woven all the way through it, but that prayer doesn't stop there. It leads to action from a heart for those around us, a vision to see life change and gospel restoration. My prayer is that we'd be marked in that way. Can I pray for us this morning? God, I ask that we would be a people of prayer, absolutely. That we would have a desire to be praying, pleading with you for help. That we would have a real longing to approach you and asking for help. The song we sang, God, I need you. We do, God, we need you every hour. And so I pray that we'd be a people of prayer. But God, my prayer is that we wouldn't just stop there, that it would lead us to action, not because that gains us favor with you, but because it's what you've called us to be about. And so would you stir in us this idea that restoration is not just only about our own individual hearts, but it's about us together, that would then move us to action, move us to encouraging one another, to serving one another, but also to be serving those who do not yet know you, so that we can share in the blessings of knowing Christ together. Would you give us courage, even in the face of opposition? Would you give us wisdom as we inspect the city and understand what the city needs? Would you give us collaboration together, that we'd be working together on this? We need your help, and so we ask for it. All this in the name of Jesus. Amen.